Okay.
हाँ, मैं स्टार्ट करता हूँ.
Sure. Good morning, Dr. Barua.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely. Your voice is audible, clear. So, Suresh, we can start now.
बिल्कुल हम स्टार्ट कर सकते हैं. Yes sir.
All the live is ready?
Yes.
Okay. Namaskar and very good morning to all of you. I am Sujay Majumdar, Project Coordinator and Head of Regional Science Center Guwahati. RSC Guwahati is one of the units of National Council of Science Museums working under the Ministry of Culture, Government of India. On behalf of the Science Center, I welcome you all in today's online lecture session on the topic Parental Involvement in Ensuring the Social and Psychological Well-being among Children and Adolescents during the COVID pandemic by Dr. Jonali Barua, Associate Professor, Department of Psychology Sciences, Tarleton State University, Texas, USA. Welcome, Dr. Jonali Barua. আজির কার্যসূচির অতিথি প্রবক্তা হওয়ার সম্মতি দিবার বাবে আমি আপনার অচরত অত্যন্ত কৃতজ্ঞ। You all are aware that coronavirus pandemic has had a substantial impact on parents and children across the world. This pandemic had an adverse effect on children and youths. The current presentation by Dr. Jonali Barua will focus on understanding how this pandemic can affect children and youths directly and indirectly in their emotional, social, and psychological well-being, and the roles of the parents in helping the children to face the world with the changed lifestyle. I repeat, the roles of the parents in helping the children to face the world with changed lifestyle. The presentation will also cover some issues associated with marital relationships as a result of the ongoing pandemic. But before that, I would like to tell a few words about the speaker. At present, Dr. Jonali Barua works as an associate professor in the Department of Texas, USA. But dear viewers, you will be happy to know that she is the daughter of Guwahati, and still today she is very much connected with this land through different association and social welfare activities, program, etc. Dr. Barua did his schooling at Udaygiri English School, Guwahati, and it was among very few English schools in Assam in those days. She completed her first master's with specialization in human development from SNDT University, Mumbai, and completed her second master's and PhD in experimental social psychology from the University of Texas at Arlington. Prior to her current job, she worked as a research associate at University of Texas Health Science Center, Dallas, and as a visiting assistant professor of psychology at Southern Methodist University, Dallas. Her current research focus is in the area of industrial organization psychology. Her research examines the cognitive process underlying group dynamics, such as creativity and innovation in face-to-face and virtual teams. She also investigates the role of parental support on adolescents' mental health. Dr. Barua also conducts workshops on enhancing interpersonal skills, team creativity, productivity, and innovation. Dr. Barua has published multiple journal articles, has 495 citations in various international journals, and has made more than 40 presentations and workshops at the national and international level. With these words, I once again welcome Dr. Jonali Barua and invite her for today's lecture. Please, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Majumdar. And Good morning, everyone, for joining me today. And I would also like to thank Regional Science Center, Kanapara, for organizing this event for me. And I am feeling honored that someone from Assam and from my homeland, someone has invited me to make a presentation. And I see a lot of people from my homeland. It really feels exciting and very, very rewarding to me. I am going to share my screen at the moment. Just let me know if you can see my screen. I think you have to allow me to share the screen.
Suresh,
Ma'am, you can use present now option.
Just give me a second.
Present now, right side bottom.
A minute. Just a minute.
yes, it is coming.
Is it coming?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, everyone. So my topic is parental involvement in ensuring social and psychological well-being among children and adolescents during the COVID pandemic. So I know everybody must have heard a lot about COVID and a lot of effects, a lot of environmental effects in terms of how COVID can have an impact on an individual. And you must have read a lot of information on the internet and heard a lot of information from the social media and other forms of media. But today I am going to specifically present some social and psychological aspects of parenting, how parents can deal with specifically children and adolescents, and how adolescents and children perceive this kind of a situation. So if you look at the current scenario, this is the current scenario for children. Our children, they are all stranded at home. Even if they want to play, they cannot play. All they can do is they can meet with their friends virtually. They can learn things virtually. And for maybe they have for a short period of time, they can go out of the house and at least get some sunshine, and rest of the day they are indoors. So if you look at the current scenario, this is the most common scenario you will find across the world. And in terms of school closure, 1.38 billion children in 186 countries are affected by school closures due to COVID-19 pandemic. The psychological impact of COVID-19 pandemic, such as fear, anxiety, sadness, it is not only limited to common people, it is also there among the health professionals. Also, there are people from different walks of life. It is affecting people in every walks of life. These effects extend to many dimensions of children's lives, their education, safety, poverty, just to name a few. And coronavirus disease pandemic has multifaceted impacts on children, specifically on psychological and physical aspects of their life. When you talk about the psychological and physical aspects of their life, I would like to bring your attention to three different aspects. So a child is surrounded by social environment, and then the child also has the physiological aspects that come from within the child, and then also the psychological aspects. So there are different stimuli that actually have an impact on the child. So how do these children handle all these multiple stimuli that are regularly coming to them? So I am going to tap some of them. So specifically for children and adolescents. So what happens to a child? What is hampered? when the child is stranded at home, when the child is not going to school. So typically what happens is when the school is over, you will always see your child running out of the school building so happy because she gets to play. Right? You will get to see there is an unstructured kind of interaction among children, and that unstructured interaction, it is very important among children because that is the time where the child learns language, how to speak. It enhances the child's vocabulary, and also the child learns the ability to handle social situation because the child interacts with other children through games and activities. And then also the child learns how to share things, how to give things, team interactions, and empathy. If another child falls, this child will go and help. So these are some of the things which actually helps the child, prepares the child to be ready to become a matured human being who can empathize with others' thoughts and feelings. And child typically learns all these in social environment, learning from unstructured environment. And what is happening now is the child is missing a lot of things in their lives. Okay. So first of all, the significant life events, like a child cannot even celebrate a birthday, child cannot invite friends. There is a break in continuity of learning, and of course, there is online learning, but what happens after maybe when a child is exposed to this kind of online environment, prolonged exposure to this kind of online environment can lead to fatigue, online always staring at the screen, and those who have some issues, in terms of their, eyes and visions, they also have additional problems. So, what happens to adolescents? Adolescence is a very unique, stage of our life. And this is the stage where, typically it is called the stage of storm and stress. At this stage of life, there are a lot of physiological changes that happen in our body, hormonal changes that can happen in our body. And and at this stage, adolescents, they typically learn new skills. And how do they learn these new skills? Of course, by going to school, by interacting with other children, by interacting with environment around the child. So what happens is when there's a lockdown, what happens? The child will be deprived from all these activities, all these kind of impacts that can happen in the growth and development of the adolescents. And also, there is an important aspect of adolescence. The adolescent at this stage, they typically strive for their identity. So because at this stage, they are very conscious about what they are wearing, what people are talking about them, how they look. So these are very normal. These are the stages of life. So at this stage, they're very, very careful about their self-identity. And if they're stranded inside the house for over a period of 12 months, so obviously this is going to have an impact in their interaction with their social environment and also within themselves, because this is something that they want from their physiologically, from their developmental tasks. This is something that is required for them. And so as a result, what happens? They will show irritability, and they will act out. Sometimes they will be rude to their parents. When the parents kind of say something, they will not answer very nicely. And oftentimes they like to lock themselves inside the room. And then there may be difficulty in attention and concentration. So all these things, if we look at this, I'm sure some of you who are attending this talk, you may have an adolescent at home who probably will be showing this kind of behavior. First of all, I would like to say that these are some of the normal, tasks that a child goes through during this particular phase of life. And this is the reason why we have to be very patient with with our adolescent children because they are going through a specific some changes in their body, which also changes their mind. There are different types of hormones that are secreted, and at this time, how do we handle kids when they feel like they are stranded inside the room and they cannot go out? And meeting friends is very important for them at this time because they learn from their friends. They validate anything they want to know whether this is right or wrong. The first thing is they'll go to their friends. They'll ask their friends. So COVID has a significant impact on adolescents if the condition is not handled properly. Let me give you two cases. In case one, here's this guy, his name is Mohan. He goes to school and suddenly his school closed. His school closed abruptly, and he started staying at home. So there will be three different types of major impact on him. Biologically, what happens? Mohan, he got back home, he's bored. His parents ask him to stay active, but he doesn't know what to do. He keeps hearing all the negative, things about COVID. People are dying, and you cannot do things. You cannot go out. You cannot play, and then your life is so restricted. All he can do is attend the class online, and after that, he doesn't know what to do. He feels lethargic due to lack of activities. And what happens? By sitting at home, he starts gaining weight. And, for kids, that is another big problem. When they sit down at home, then when they don't get engaged in a lot of physical activities, then it leads to obesity in children. That is a big problem. And then comes the psychological aspect. Mohan feels lonely because he doesn't have friend anymore. Well, he does have family. He has his parents. Parents are busy. They do their work, and he has to stay on his own. He feels lonely. Then when somebody feels lonely, what happens? They start having negative thoughts in their mind. All the negative thoughts keep coming to their mind because they have nothing to do. There is no goal. An important aspect of children's growth and development is how to keep the child busy. If we do not keep the child busy with something, what happens is they start, when they run short of ideas, they don't know what to do. They will start randomly browsing on the computer, trying to find things, and they may end up, getting into some inappropriate information, learning some inappropriate information. So being busy is an important aspect for a child. But for Mohan, in this case, has nothing else to do. Well, he has no set goals in his life at this moment. And in terms of social interaction, he has no friends to socialize in person. He does socialize virtually, but that is like a short period of time. There is a vast difference between socializing in person and socializing, face to online for a certain period of time on screen. So definitely he feels bored. And there comes Adam. So Adam's situation is like this. Adam's school closed abruptly. He started staying at home. In terms of biological aspect, Adam's daily routine is packed with variety of activities. How? Because his parents created a timetable for him. His parents said, okay, now that school is closed, you are at home. So if you do not follow a set routine with some activities, daily activities for the whole week, then you will not learn well. Just attending the school does not really help. So Adam's parents, they created nice daily routine. They set some goals for Adam, and I'm going to talk about the goal in a minute. So, and then Adam also gets, exposed to the news and the discussions on COVID, which obviously makes him concerned. However, what happens is Adam is busy. So psychologically, Adam has no time to feel lonely because his parents have set up a timetable for him. He keeps doing something or the other. there is a time for taking the class. Then after that, there is another time where he has to do some household chore. And then there's another time where he has to sleep, another time where he has to play with his little brother or sister. So these are the timetable. These are the items in the timetable that are set for Adam. So Adam does miss his school. Now, Adam also, he is engaged in a lot of school activities. He was engaged in leadership activities, and suddenly it all stopped. So what Adam's parents did, they enrolled Adam in some online leadership skills where they teach leadership, how to do leadership, leadership learning skills. So what happens is, because Adam likes that particular activity, so the parents actually identified that in Adam and gave a special class to Adam. Adam now virtually learns that, and he loves that. So that's how he spends his time, also a part of his time, learning his leadership skill. So what happens, even though he's not going to school, he is doing something that he was doing in school. At least he's doing doing that through online. He's learning something about it. And then in terms of social life, Adam made some new friends in his leadership skill class, and they all have their common goals, and Adam has a goal, and he looks forward to his to the good times when the school is going to reopen, when he is going to go back and get back to his leadership activities that he used to do. And now he will be even better, because he knows that now he's taking that class. When he goes back to school, he will be even better. And it is not only for leadership activity, it could be any other activity where the child was interested. So the child can get into that kind of activity, learn more about that particular activity, so that when the child goes back to school, the child can do even better. So it is not about the circumstance, but what you do with that given circumstance. Well, restrictive environment is not necessarily always detrimental to one's learning and development. I can give you some example. This pandemic is not the first instance on this particular earth. I can say pandemic came multiple times, or pandemic-like situations also came multiple times on this earth. And if you can remember, or if you have read, Newton's discovery actually happened during a pandemic. It was a pandemic, and there was a lockdown in Europe because of bubonic plague, and that was the time Newton was stranded at home. But what he did, he channelized his interest towards whatever he likes to do. He was focusing on his research, and he discovered his Newton's laws. And there are many things there are many inventions, there are many discoveries that took place during that time. I can give you some example, like gunpowder, atomic energy, penicillin. I can give you one example. War-like situations, when there is war, in this world, what happens is, it's again another form of pandemic, another form of lockdown. People cannot go out of the house. Everybody is indoors. People are inside. They are in a lockdown kind of a situation. Even in those kind of stressful situation, people came up with a lot of creative things. Penicillin, atomic energy, all these things came up during that time. Florence Nightingale, during the war, what happened was, she noticed that a lot of soldiers died not in the battleground, they died in the hospital. And she did some statistics, she did some mathematics, and she found out that more soldiers, why do they die in hospitals than the battlefields? And she found out that because they need a care. During those days, there was no care. There was medical care, there was medical attention, everything was from medicine perspective, but there was no that psychological support, that emotional support, that touch, that hug. And that is how she introduced nursing as an institution. So there are many new things that can come up even during pandemic. So it's not that, because there is a lockdown, we are totally stranded. It just stops our creativity. We can be creative in many ways. These are just an example. Think about a sailor. For example, for a sailor, this is the situation. Sailor during quarantine, sailor after quarantine, or a sailor's day-to-day life, it is always like that. A sailor is always stranded alone in a small space in that little, in the middle of the ocean. Think about an astronaut. What happens to the astronaut? The astronaut is always inside that spaceship. It is a very congested environment. But how do they survive there? They survive because they have an objective. They have their daily tasks set by the authority, and that same thing can happen with children. If they have an objective in their life, if they have an objective like, okay, I want to be a good tennis player, it doesn't matter. Even if this is a lockdown, this is temporary, but I still have to work on it. Let me keep watching how Federer plays. Let me keep watching how, Nadal plays. Look at his tricks. So the kids who are really, I'm sure, many kids, they have passion about many other things other than studies. So parents should identify or somehow tap those kind of interests in children and try to set up some goals for them. Like, do this, learn this, so that when the lockdown will be over, you go back to school and then you show your talent to everyone. You join the competitions, So these are some of the objectives that parent can set. This keeps them busy and this reduces the likelihood of negative outcomes. So there are many such examples like that. So what we need to do is focus on the positive. There are a lot of negative things in the environment around us, but we need to select the positive aspects. Now, how adolescents can cope? Recognize that your anxiety is completely normal. Everybody will be anxious when they hear this kind of news and, people suffering, going to hospital, people dying, everybody will be anxious. However, you need to do a few things. For example, always use the reliable sources. Do not always rely on just media. Read what UNICEF has published. Look at the sources. What World Health Organizations they have published. So look at all those reliable sources. And also remember one thing, COVID-19 infection is generally mild, and especially for children and young adults. Sometimes, people say that, children and adults, they are the biggest, they are the ones who spread COVID-19. Well, actually, if you go back and read the articles, it says that it is a myth. That is not the case. Okay. One important aspect is that create distractions for the children. Do not let them focus on those news items or all those negative discussions. So that is how you, if you can somehow distract your child from those kind of negative aspects and give them something to do which they enjoy doing. Now that can really help. Now I know many parents are thinking like, okay, they enjoy playing video game. If I ask them to do what they enjoy doing, they will be just playing video game all day. Again, as I said, we need to create a timetable for the child. Maybe for 2 hours do task 1, then for 2 hours take a little break, for another 2 hours do go and take a short nap, then another 2 hours go and play with your little sister, go and clean the house, remove the toys from the floor. So we can always create these kind of timetables, and these are distractions. Find new ways to connect to friends. So new ways are basically virtual. You can set up times where you can virtually meet with your friends. And I know adolescents, they always do that. They are always in touch with their friends, and it is a requirement for them. So as parents, we should not feel really agitated that my adolescent child is kind of spending too much time texting or having a chat with friend. Well, at this lockdown, we should be little understanding, because they don't share everything with their parents, because there is a generation gap and there is an age difference. They like to share their knowledge, their ideas, their dreams, mostly with their friends. So when they get a chance, when we give them the opportunity to connect to their friends, this gives some sort of a therapy to them. And this is very important. Now, if we deprive them of that, then that becomes a problem. Yes, they do spend time on, a lot of time on screen, on their cell phone. We can always set up some rules, like, okay, during this time to this time, like during our dinner, we all will have dinner together. You are not going to see your phone, or from this time to this time, you are not going to touch the phone. Just keep the phone aside at this place. So these are some of the things that we can do. That does not mean that we are going to deprive the child from the phone for the whole day, especially for adolescents, and give just about 30 minutes of the day, because during lockdown that becomes a little punishment for the adolescents, because they have nothing else to do. And also, well, even if they have things to do, they want to interact with their friends. If they want to learn new things, if they have something new they came up with, they want to share with their friends. They validate their knowledge. This validation happens only with friends, not with parents. Also, one more important aspect is adolescents, they need to focus on their own self, what they like, and how they, how they are making the best out of what they like to do. And parents also should cooperate on that. If the child likes drawing, then let the child draw. I know that parents, I'm sure most of the parents do that. They allow their child to spend time drawing. Maybe give some new ideas, like, oh, well, there are different types of, creative activities in terms of drawing. The child can do drawing, the child can do painting, the child can do something, slightly different, yet creative, but in the same area. So we have to be also creative as parents to give them new ideas so that they can try out those new ideas. And also we have to always make sure that the adolescents or the children, they're taking care of their own body. They are eating healthy, they are having some physical activity. Now, talking about physical activity, I understand that everybody does not have a backyard to run around. There are a lot of people, there are many families in urban areas who live in apartments and they don't have a backyard, or they cannot go outside. So for those kind of students, kids, what we can do is, they can do skipping inside the house, or organize some games and activities. Parents should be involved. Now, parents also, there were times when we used to say, well, parents don't play, the kids play and all that. But that does not happen anymore. We have to be involved in their activities. They enjoy it more when we are like their friends. And we have to give them the opportunity to express themselves. And, one of the easiest way to have children express their feelings is when you are doing something with them. Suppose the child is playing and you are also playing with the child as if you are another child. Then what happens slowly, the child will start talking to you like the child is talking to his friend, and you get to know a lot of things from the child that way. But if you come to the child as a parent, as if like an authority, then that becomes a problem. They will not share things because they feel afraid that, well, mom won't like it, my dad won't like it. They're very strict. So we have to be friends to them. So create daily diaries, daily routines. Daily diaries, they are very important. I came across a family where my friend was saying that my son, he doesn't do anything. He just plays, video games, and end of the day at night when he just goes to sleep at night. That's all. So I just said that you can do one thing. Why don't you create a diary? Ask your child to write a diary. Okay, in that diary, you ask the child what activities you have done today, in the whole day. Just write that. If you have multiple siblings and multiple children, ask all of them to write, what they have done in the whole day. And you yourself, as a parent, also write one. End of the day, before going to bed, everybody sit down and then talk about the things you have done during the day. I know parents do a lot of things, but there is no harm if you write it down and then share with your child why you are doing it, because when you do it, your child will do it. Now, if a child who is playing a video game all day, and if he has to write that diary, obviously that will bring something, that will ring a bell in his mind. You don't have to say anything directly, but the child will feel like, oh, I haven't done anything else actually. I was playing video games all day. What do I write? Then this is, when you make a child realize something indirectly in a subtle way, that has a stronger impact than when you shout and scream on the child and keep saying something all the time, because the child gets used to shouting and screaming, But if the child realizes something on his own, that has a stronger impact on the child. And maybe next day the child will think, okay, apart from I have to write my diary, so let me do this. So that could be a starting point. So that actually helped, because one of my friends said that actually helped. My son was really embarrassed when he came to know that he was just playing video game all day and there was nothing else and he was not doing anything. So he actually started doing one or two activities. It started with he just did it for 1 minute the next day and then he went back. But then slowly it increased to 5 minutes, 10 minutes of other activities. Take breaks. So I understand that being in front of the screen, doing things on screen, even if it is learning, it can lead to fatigue. So what we suggest is take breaks from doing things. You can switch activities, watch something on TV, then read, then listen to news, or go to watch some play with your siblings. So if you can switch things, or if the parents can create a situation where I can understand that at this time the parents have to be more vigilant on their children, what they're doing, what kind of activities they're doing, and have they done a certain activity for a certain, for a relatively long period of time. If that is the case, then the parent has to come back and say, okay, now let's do this. Okay, diversify the activities, physical activities, take a walk in the nature, when there is no curfew time, there may be field, outside your house, take a walk, go cycling. There are many kids who are going cycling. That really helps in physical activities. There is something which is very important from psychological perspective, which is called reinforcement. Through reinforcement, we can teach a lot of things to children. What is reinforcement? Reinforcement is a reward given in response to a certain good behavior. If a child does something good, oftentimes what happens is parents, they kind of forget to notice that. Even if it is a very small thing a child does, it is very important that the parents appreciate that and praise the child for that. And what happens if it is something good, then when the parent rewards the child, that the frequency of that activity increases. Okay, and actually that procedure is called reinforcement. When you reward a child for something positive, then the frequency of that particular activity increases. And that happens to not only human being, it happens to cats, dogs, in most of the species. This is a part of learning theory. So same thing happened in COVID. If a child is, for example, say the mom asks the child, you can use your cell phone, you can play on your cell phone only for 2 hours or 1 hour. After that, immediately you shut it down. And actually, if the child does it, then if you give the child a praise, a hug, or you give a chocolate to the child, basically you are giving a positive reinforcement. And it is very important when a child listens to you, you said something and the child said yes and the child obeyed. It is very important to give a reward to the child. It doesn't have to be something big. And if you give something big, then actually you are spoiling the child. Always make a habit to give small things like a praise, a hug, or say, oh, you did this, I'm going to play with you today. Whatever you want me to play with you, I'm going to play. So these are positive reinforcement. There is negative reinforcement too. Negative reinforcement is something that also helps learning. For example, a child doesn't like doing something. Okay, suppose your child doesn't like to drink milk, and say you want your child to drink milk every day, and the child doesn't like to drink milk, and then the child did something really good one day, and you wanted to appreciate the child. So you can say the child, okay, fine, today you did this. Yeah, I know you don't like to drink milk. I will make you maybe a milkshake or something else. You don't have to drink milk. So what you are doing, it is a negative reinforcement. It is called negative reinforcement because you are doing something, you are removing an event which the child did not like. And that is actually indirectly that helps the child. That brings a lot of positive feeling in the child's mind. They start trusting their parents. When the parents reward them and do things, they feel like, okay, my parents understand me. Okay, so what happens is in our environment, there are different types of stimulants. Okay, so we cannot, if we focus on all the stimulants around us, then our mind will be bombarded with too many information. When our mind is bombarded with too many information, then it is difficult. It is very simple. If you have too many information in your mind, it is very difficult to process the information. So what we do to make things easier for us, we always choose the things that make sense to that help us to complete a task or to lead our daily life. So what happens is now in this COVID situation, there may be so many negative things that are coming to you. There are negative, those news, bad news that you are hearing, the death news, and, people going to hospital and all these are all negative things that are coming to you. At the same time, there are a lot of positive things as well. What are the positive things? You are always with your child. You are not going away. You are not going to work. You're spending quality time with your family, and so what you can do is focus on the positive aspect and think of what I can do. The things that are not under my control, I am not going to focus on this. The whole pandemic, how is it going to go away? There is no point thinking about it. I myself, what is under my control is how I can take care of myself, my body, my health, my exercise, whether I'm wearing my mask, whether I'm, being involved so that I do not get bored, or whether my children are eating healthy. So these are the things as parents we need to focus. Now we need to stay away from all the negative things that happen. And then what happens is automatically when parents feel happy, when the parents look at positive things, the children also look at positive things. There is something called vicarious emotion. What is vicarious emotion? We will always see that when somebody is happy, we automatically feel happy. It is very natural, kind of a reaction for us. When somebody is smiling at us, instantly we smile back. When somebody is crying, we feel like crying. This is called vicarious emotion. As a parent, if I show concern, if I show that I'm really concerned about this is happening, that is happening, I'm always talking about all the negativities, the children are around, they can hear us, they can see us, and they really feel affected when they see their parents are upset. It affects them. So it is very important that we remain very positive in front of our children, because other aspects of pandemic, we cannot do anything about it. It will go away on its own, or government is going to do whatever needs to be done, or all what I can do is what I can do to myself and to my family. I cannot control the whole world. Why should I worry? Why should I spend time, waste my, energy thinking about it? So what is the role of the parent? So according to American Association of Pediatrics, there are a few things that they talked about, because we all know there is one problem. This is not only in Assam or India, it is everywhere, all over the world. Even in US, we were at home for the whole year, for the whole year, not even whole year. It was like about 14 months. It started sometime in March. It ended like May, this last May. So we all went through all the problems here, the same problems like the people went through other parts of the world. So one major issue is how to deal with children who are, spending a lot of time on the computer, on the screen, social media, and information on the internet. Now, we must know one thing, that media has both pros and cons. It's not always bad. It has a lot of educational content. Sometimes, yes, there are negative things as well. There may be inappropriate images, unhealthy advertisements. There are things which are not appropriate for the child's age. So this is the point where the parents have to be vigilant. There are many ways to do it. You can set up parental control on your computer. When you set up parental control on your computer, on your child's computer or on your child's phone, there are ways to do it. Actually, the child cannot cannot open all the websites. When the child browses on the internet, only the child-friendly things come up. So parental control is important, and then you can set up certain time, like, okay, at from this time to this time there will be no internet. You can just disconnect the internet. This is the time the child can do some other activities. So there are ways how you can stop them from doing things like that. But that does not mean that we totally discourage them from getting exposed to media, because media provides a lot of information nowadays. The children, they are learning, those who are learning from school, from home, there are a lot of questions they have, that they don't get, the answers to those they don't get, because the teacher, teaches online and then goes away. And it is not a real classroom environment where the child goes and raises hand and asks questions, takes time. So what happens is there may be question in child's mind, and there may be information that the child did not understand in the textbook. The child will obviously go Google it and learn, how, what is it. And there are a lot of information out there. And actually, this is one of the positive aspect, how children, they learn so much from the internet, under proper parental guidance. Healthy role modeling is an important aspect. As parents, we have to be a great role model for our children. We have to maintain a routine ourselves. We cannot sleep late at night. If we sleep at 12 o'clock at night, and if we expect our child to sleep like at 9 o'clock, that does not happen. That may not work. So if you want your child to sleep at 9 o'clock, maybe as parents, you also have to, you should go to bed with your child. And also, there may be situations where there is a job loss in the house. The father lost the job. The father may be upset. But, here in American context, these are some of the things that the teachers are telling the parents. For example, suppose if the parent is losing the job, then do not show your distress to your child. When your child sees distress in your face, automatically, as I said, vicarious emotion, the child really gets affected. And not only the negative, I'm not only focusing on the negative part, even the positive part, there are positive things. When you smile a lot, when you laugh a lot, your child will laugh and smile. When you talk about positive things, like, the child will also start becoming very positive. They always mimic us, reduce watching sensational news. I know as parents we enjoy sometimes watching all those new arguments that take place in the news media, and those kind of things actually they teach very negative things to children. The children also mimic those kind of behavior, like when they talk to others they also learn to become argumentative. So as parents we also need to be very vigilant what the children are exposed to. So those kind of argumentative behavior, sometimes what happens is the parents, the mom and dad, they get into some sort of argument in front of their children, and that is something which is very damaging to children, and that can have. And now this can become more often because everybody is at home, husband wife, they're together at home all the time, and obviously when we are together we tend to find each other faults more often, and then what happens, there is a tendency to get into arguments. And if something like that happens, and if you get into arguments in front of your children, if your children get affected, obviously first thing they'll get affected, second thing they'll learn that, and they will do that with others, and they will do that to you as well, and that becomes a culture. So we have to be very careful what kind of culture, and for that we have to be a good role model for our children. Kids need rules about technology. As I already said, we need to set up some rules, set up some time, specific timeline. We set time. Also, there should be. We should turn off the electronics. Say, for this weekend, we are not going to turn on the electronic. At least for Saturday, let's not get into any electronics. We'll just play. We'll do a lot of activities. That calls for a lot of involvement from parents, but that's fine. At least the parents will have their children do something else other than being engaged in electronics. Engage in your child technology. Turn to also one more thing which is important. Children, they play video games. There are a lot of video games which are really not really very good. They are very aggressive kind of video games. And then there are some video games like Minecraft. Well, they are not aggressive, but at the same time, that can teach you some degree of creativity. You can learn from it. It is good for your cognitive development to some extent. However, if the child gets addicted to Minecraft, then that can be a problem. So what you will do is maybe you will set up some time limit for the child, and you have to do it right from the beginning. If the child gets addicted to that, it becomes really difficult. Still, we can do it. We can we can set up the timetable, like you can do this particular activity now, and then activity 2 now. So come up with that timetable. And as a parent, sometimes it's a good idea. I have found that, I have heard from other parents that you also learn to play what they are playing. Play with them. Video games that, sometimes parents think like, oh, I don't like it. It is boring. But for your child's sake, learn that, get into that. Then what will happen is you will play when your child is playing. You can play with your child, and then you can say, okay, now we are done. Let's take a break. Then we'll play tomorrow again. Now there you go. Your child got a partner to play the game. So that way you can somehow manipulate the timings for the child. So there are many other important aspects also. Establish reasonable limits, turn media mistake. Sometimes, children, when they go overboard, you don't buy the data for them. Just tell them that, you went overboard with the use of data, so I'm not going to buy. So that is also some sort of a reinforcement that you are doing. So they learn from their mistakes. So that can happen. Instead of shouting and, really getting angry with them, if we do something like this, so that can have stronger impact. Okay. And also one more thing, we should know that it is okay for teens to be online. Given the current situation, we cannot stop them, for like too long a time. They have to, because all forms of learning happen there. All we can do is we can diversify what they are doing. Do this now and do that now, like that, Try to keep or develop a daily routine and set technology limits. I have already talked, validate your child's feelings and experience. If the child feels sad, you have to have the patience to actually kind of understand the child. Don't get mad at the child. You should tell the child, yes, I understand your pain. I understand you are upset. But look at this. If you're upset, then you cannot solve this problem. So definitely, it is very important that there is a communication. There is an eye contact between the parents and the children. That kind of communication is very, very important. What happens is we always, in Indian context, in not only in India, but in most of the Asian countries, we kind of try to be very strict with our children. We are kind of very, very authoritative, and what we do is we kind of, whatever I say, you have to do. Instead of doing that, if you present multiple choices to the child, that saying that, okay, this is the choice. If you do this, then this is the consequence. If you do this, this is the consequence. You set up the consequence. And then accordingly, what happens? The child will learn. Okay, so these are some of the things you can do. Now, recent research finding has revealed that, this pandemic kind of environment, it depends like how you look at this particular environment, how you train your children to adjust this kind of an environment. Okay, think of some positive aspect. For example, there is no morning rush at this time. Remember other times when there is school day, everybody gets up early in the morning. There is so much of rush. Sometimes children, they don't get time to have their breakfast. They rush to catch the school bus. Now there is no school bus. The child has good enough time. The mother has good enough time. The mother can make a good breakfast for the child, a healthy breakfast, and then the child can sit down in front of the computer. Child is more relaxed, and the family can spend quality time. What happens sometimes, we don't focus on these things. Immediate availability of parental guidance and support, which is so important. Otherwise, most of the time, working moms, they leave their children with nanny or maybe daycare and some other places. So what happens is, obviously, there is nothing like parental guidance, parental support, which we are now we can do, that we think that we can consider that to be a privilege for us. There are scopes to explore new talents among children. Now, they may like something which they never got a chance to explore because life was always busy. Early morning, they go to school, and then they do all the regular, educational activities, but they never had a time to explore what else do they like. And this is the time where they get a chance. Maybe you can identify what the child likes. If the child likes music, put him into some music school. Everything is online. If the child always wanted to play guitar, maybe this is the time you can give a guitar lesson to the child. Also there are other activities like drawing, writing. Maybe the child is really good at writing, and I can give you quite a few examples about writing. The children, I have known, like my next door neighbor, this 11-year-old child. The child has actually written a book on science fiction. And how he did it, he always loved watching, kind of movies that are related to science fiction. He read books that are related to science fiction. He had a lot of, he was really interested in science fiction. But when he was at home, his mom said that, why don't you write a story? You have read so many science fiction. Why don't you write one on your own? And the child started writing, and he loves that. He loves that area. His mom just right, and he like, okay, yeah, that's a good idea. He started writing. He actually ended up writing a big book, and he published that book. And that is one example. There is another example, another person in the same city here. One of my friend, her daughter wrote another book, and she loves baking. She loves, her mom taught her how to cook, how to bake during the COVID lockdown, And her mom says, now that you are learning how to bake different types, and what she does is she goes to internet, she Googles, she comes up with new baking ideas, she tries them, and then the mom says, why don't you write it down? So she wrote down like a lot of recipes of food, baking items, and she actually published that recipe book. So there are so many different ways, there are so many creative talents that child can suddenly, we can actually identify among children, which we never saw before. It is all possible at this time. Of course, now there is a reduction in our expense. Everybody is at home, we are not spending much. So we look at it also helps when we look at all these positive aspects. There is a rejuvenated sense of community and social cohesion. Now people feel like, because they're deprived of social connection, because we all humans, we are social animal, we cannot live without contact with other humans. So now suddenly, because of this lockdown, now we realize what is the importance of this social connection. So now you are again, this is something positive. Now when down will be over, we'll probably appreciate the good times we had with our friend, with our extended family member who we hardly who we could not meet during COVID. Also, there are other environmental positive impact. There is a decrease in the air quality has improved. There is a decrease in sewage and industrial effluents in the rivers. The rivers have become cleaner. Look at all these positive. Think about positive aspect. So see, at this time, we know there are negative things, but at the same time, what we need to do is we have to focus on the positive aspect and share these positive feelings with our children. And these positive feelings really help. And I have looked at some, recent articles on this, and these articles are being published in this year. And it has been just about over a year. The researchers are already doing studies on the psychological impact of COVID-19. And what they found was that it is very interesting. They found that, the magnitude of effect is not always negative. It is mixed, okay? Suggesting that lockdown do not have a uniformly detrimental effect on mental health. And why? Because there are in households where parents, they know how to train their children, how to maintain a positive environment, that did not have a very detrimental effect. And also teachers play a significant role here. In United States, the teachers, they understand that the students, they are inside, they are indoors, they are not coming to school, they are feeling lonely. So teachers also give a lot of they spend a lot of time coming up with assignments that can help their children kind of kill the time during that COVID period, during this lockdown period. Sometimes the teachers also say, okay, I'm going to extend the deadline of your submission so that you don't have to stick to the phone, the computer for such a long time. I have extended your deadline. Go take a break. You don't have to submit it tomorrow. Submit it on so and so date. Just shut down everything. Go take a break. Go spend with your family. Sometimes teachers say, "Oh, this week I'm not giving you much homework. This week is your family time. Go spend time with your family." So this is not only about parents. It is like a whole system. We have to look at the teachers, how they are also dealing with their children. It is also a good idea to understand the restrictions the children are going through. So accordingly, teachers also should be flexible. And that is what I have seen for my daughter in her school. The teacher says, okay, this week, no homework. And the teacher announces it suddenly. And then the child feels very happy. And then automatically what parents do is, okay, you don't have homework. The parents say, okay, we are going to organize a play. We are going to organize some activity. The parents have to be very alert. They won't let the child okay, now you can play your video game. So we have to be very vigilant about this. It is a lot of, coordination between teacher, between parents, the environment, the neighbor, all these play a role in the child's growth and development. Pandemic, as I said, it did not only happen this time. It happened in the past also. People survived. SARS was another big pandemic that happened there in Hong Kong. After SARS, what happened was people actually reported increased feeling of embeddedness to the community. They felt more connected to the community. They started becoming more caring about their friends and family members, because they realized, like, staying away, staying alone, staying, isolated, what it means. One of the most difficult, I would say, very harsh kind of punishment is for the prisoners is the isolation. What do? They isolate that prisoner in a cell, and the prisoner does not get to see anybody. The prisoner is there in that cell all day. Only he gets food, and he doesn't get anybody else. Okay, and that can have a significant negative impact on that prisoner. So why I'm saying this because man is a social animal. So the social connections are very important. We sometimes tend to take it for granted. We kind of forget that, how to appreciate people's help, how to return people's favor. We forget all that. And sometimes conveniently we kind of, okay, I'll do it later. But because of these kind of pandemic, sometimes we start having those realizations. This particular study talked about that. And then there is another study. After this particular nuclear disaster in Fukushima, they found that there was enhanced social connection. So look at all those positive aspects. And there was one question where they were saying that my child has been going through all this for such a long time now. It's almost a year. Now, is this an impact, COVID impact? Is it going to be lifelong for the child? Is it going to stay in the child's mind for a longer period of time? I must say that, well, children's mind is, they learn things very fast. They adjust to the changing environment very fast. So when the environment changes, they will bounce back, because we have seen our children now things are open here. Now we can go out. Mask is not mandatory. Most of us, we have already started, we have taken our vaccination. We can go to the park. And what we have noticed is that children got back to their normal lifestyle. They're playing like as usual. They're happy. So they bounce back. It doesn't take too long. So we really do not need to worry much about how the children feel. So at this point, I think I will ask questions. And if you have any questions, after that, maybe if you are interested in some discussion, we can do that. So I am going to stop sharing my screen, and you can ask me question. I think I have taken time longer than what was expected. I'm really sorry for that. I did not notice that it's taking such a long time. I think you are muted, Mr. Majumdar.
Please unmute yourself. Unmute, sir, please.
Sorry, sir. I'm sorry. Thank you, Dr. Bodu. You talk a lot of positive things for our parents. So I think they will be very much benefited from it. Now we have some questions. We got one question from one of our colleagues from Calicut Regional Center Calicut, Mr. Jayanto Ganguly. His question is, I have two general questions which includes the pandemic situation too. Number one, why children, toddlers up to the age of 10 or so like to play with toys. For examples, some children go on rolling a toy car and gazing at it. They love this doing daily and maybe for years. What is the status of their mind? What do they go on thinking? It is his first question. And the second question is, do children, particularly younger ones, understand the intention of speech or hidden structure in the speech or text?
Thank you. So regarding the first question, when a child is born, one of the important aspect of child's learning is through play. Play is an important way through which the child explores. When the child explores the world, what does the child does? What does the child do? The child plays with the toy. The child is not only playing with the toy, the child is exploring the toy. When the child is actually playing with that little car, the child learns that the car has wheels, the car runs. When I push the car, it will go there. And the child, all these kind of experience, all these activities, all these first-hand activities give some knowledge to the child. The child develops the knowledge, learns about speed, that if we, push the car this much, it will go to that distance, and then the child also learns other things. For example, say, okay, this gives me some sort of happiness, I can share this with another friend and I can play with it. So what happens is when the child interacts with another child, throw that toy, another thing happens. Now the child is learning to communicate with the child. When the child communicates with the child through this game, the child is learning language. It increases the child's vocabulary. They learn different words, different parts of the car. So playing is an important developmental task. We call it developmental task because, for human being from birth till death, we go through certain stages of life. At that stage, during childhood, children, they like to play because play is a form of learning. And through play, they learn things. They make sense of the environment. So this is a very normal aspect of learning for children. And what was your second question? You said...
The second question was, do children, particularly younger ones, understand the intention of speech or hidden structure in the speech or text?
Well, it depends. They do understand the intention of the speech of their parents. The children, when they spend a lot of time with their parents. When they understand the intention of the speech of their parents, they do understand the intention of the speech of any other caregiver. Again, it depends on type of what age group you are referring to. But yes, obviously, it's just that I can say one thing. When a child grows, the child's development, first and foremost development that takes place in the child is the, rapid development is brain. The brain develops right from behind, and it starts developing like this from behind, and then starts developing more and more, then it comes towards front. So brain at the back, in a very simple language, it deals with how to stand, how to walk, how to balance yourself. So all these things it deals with. And then slowly as the brain's development grows, comes little, towards front, the child starts learning language, and the very front, which is the prefrontal cortex, it actually takes about 24 years, for the child to actually, have the brain fully developed. Because we always think that when the child is 18 years old or 19 years old, we think, okay, now the child is officially adult, but that is not the case. The child is still learning, the brain is developing. And yes, the children, they do understand what you are meaning to say when you are saying something, what is the hidden meaning, what you are trying to indicate. But of course, if there is very difficult vocabulary that you are using in your language, maybe it will be difficult for the child.
Okay, thank you. We have one more question. One of our viewers he asked, sent me this question, Manuel. It can be seen and felt that the outbreak of the global pandemic and subsequent lockdowns have been hindering the daily lives and routines of all, including our little ones. As parents, although we are trying our best to reduce the adverse effects of the lockdown, etc., on our child, but I still feel it's affecting him. My son, Naman Kashyap, who is 9 years old now and has not gone to school for almost 1.5 years, nor have he made his friends. Apart from studying, as per his online classes, there is no proper physical or mental activities for him. As a parent, I feel his activities inside home are not sufficient for his development, which is age demands. I request if proper advice be given on how to use time creatively for our children to uplift their physical and mental health during these crucial days. I also request to advise on ways to make time positive for us parents also, since our mood and activities also contribute a lot on our child mental health. This was written by Jyotsna Das and Vishwajit Das. I think you have already covered his answer.
Yes. So one thing I would like to say that engage the child in activity. When you are engaging the child in physical activity, if required, then you also, try to be engaged in the same activity. The child will copy you. If you have a backyard in your house, go backyard, say, okay, let's play something. Just play catch. Can you catch me? So you can do that kind of activity as well. It doesn't have to be very structured. So you can come up with anything that calls for physical activity. Go up, if you have staircase in your house, go upstairs, come down, go upstairs, come down. So there are a lot of activities you can be. Of course, you have to be very creative, because you cannot have your child go outside your boundary, outside the boundary of your house. But it is possible, be involved in your child activity. That is important. If you ask your child to go run now, you are putting a lot of weight. That will not happen. You run with your child, and it helps you as well. It is not only child who is gaining weight or who is getting bored. We also are, at our age, we need more activity actually, and we live a very sedentary lifestyle. So if we set an example for our children by walking along with the child, and say sometimes just run also with the child. Doesn't have, I know you will be tired, but then doesn't matter. Your child will copy you, and child will run 4 steps further. All these things help a lot. When parents themselves, they're involved in these kind of activities, that really helps.
Okay, we have many more questions coming up. I will take not much. I know there is almost, I think, 12 o'clock at night now, ma'am?
Actually, it is 12:47.
Sorry. We will take only 2 questions.
Okay, that's okay. I'm fine.
Dr. Kalpana Boda wants to know, sometimes it really becomes frustrating for parents for some or other reason. So then, what do we do? I mean, how do we hide our emotions before children?
This is a very good question, actually. And I would say, I'm sure most of our parents, we go through this. We get frustrated, but definitely we have to hide it. Sometimes parents have to be good actors. Trust me. We really have to be good actors in front of our kids. Even though you are upset, you cannot show your sad face to your child. You can go into your bedroom, lock yourself inside the room, and cry out how much ever you want to. And that is a good thing. That's what most of the counseling psychologists, they always say, that if you feel sad, if you want to vent out, lock yourself inside the room, or go to a place somewhere where the child cannot see you or others cannot see you. Just cry out. You cry. That way you vent it out. Talk to your friend. Pick the phone, call up your friend, and then cry in front of your friend and say, this has happened, and what happens, that vents out your emotion. But yes, do not show it to your child, because that affects children. They have, their mind is very, very receptive to any kind of stimulus in the environment, and they learn them very fast. So that's all I can
Kalpana Bora has another question. Second question is, adolescent children do not share things with parents. Sometimes they tend not to trust our values and faith. How to handle that?
Okay, so here is one thing I would say. Growing up is for a child, when you are bringing up a child, in other words, when you are parenting, it is a two-way process. It's not always like what I teach my child, what I have learned all these years, how I grew up, how my parents brought me up. I want to bring up my child the same way. That cannot happen, because there is a generation gap. First of all, there is a generation gap. The generation gap, sometimes we forget. Our era, our time was different, and their time is different. These are millennial kids. They are very digital, and that is one thing. And the second thing is about the values. We have to understand that things evolve. Evolution is a part of our lifestyle, not only for humans, for every species. In other words, what evolution does, we evolve to adjust ourselves to the changing environment. When that environment is changing, I have to change myself. And now values, well, I cannot stick to the same values that I had before. Maybe yes, if there are some good values that I want to inculcate in the child, I can do that. But provided that the children in their generation follow that kind of value, then it is easier to set those kind of values. Then you can say, okay, this is something that kids are doing at your age. It is there in the book, or this is something in your generation they do. Why don't you do that? But we cannot expect our child to do something, follow some values that we had during our lifetime. That is one important aspect. We have to adjust to the changing environment. That is important. That brings a trust. The child will trust us when we kind of try to speak in the language of our children. They will start trusting us. They will start liking us. They will like, okay, my mom is cool. She knows, she is not like a old-fashioned mom who talk about old values. She knows what I want, what my friends want, what is my current requirement. So that is very important. Two-way process.
Another question from Rajeshri Bhattacharya. He is from our Kolkata office. Good morning, madam. It has been noticed that during the pandemic, the children feel annoyed or irritated more quickly. How to address a child's obnoxious behavior?
Yes, that's a good question. I would say one thing about this. You need to first observe to what extent the child is agitated. I can say one thing though, that this agitation, there are different levels. Okay, if it is an agitation that just started because of COVID, if it just started because of COVID, or from the time the lockdown started, then obviously this is temporary. So you have to be patient at this moment. If the child gets angry, we should not respond to the child with equal degree of anger. There are ways how we can deal with these children. First of all, reinforcement. When the child is not showing angry, for example, when the child is doing something good, give a reward to the child and say, well, today you did not show anger to me. That's why that's why you get this. Give some sort of reward. This reinforcement, and it has been tried and tested for ages. When you reward a child for something good, then what happens? The frequency of that good habit increases. And so when the child does not show that anger, and you say that, oh, today I noticed that you did not show that much of an anger. I'm really very proud of you. And give a hug to the child or praise to the child. And do not fail to do that every time that happens. happens. That consistency helps. So this reinforcement really helps. And if the condition is kind of temporary or it has just started due to COVID. Now, there may be conditions when the child, sometimes aggression is something which can be like, it can happen for a longer period of time, and that may need some specific attention. Then you may need seek help from specific counselor, but the temporary aspects can yourself take.
Mr. Pradeep Bachi, hello. Mr. Pradeep Bachi, you have one question. I think before that, there is one question. It is a little different from our topic, but still it's related to children. Jyoti Mehra, she wants to know what is the right age to train child to sleep independently in his or her room. This is a very interesting question.
No, this is interesting, but there has been a lot of studies on this topic. There is a cultural difference. I have also, been engaged in this area in the past. That's a very, there is a cross-cultural difference in this particular aspect. Now, let me give you a little background. It may take little time. So there is a difference between cultures. There is one culture which is called the collectivistic culture, and there's another culture which is called the individualistic culture. So the Asian countries, all the Asian countries like Japan, China, India, all of South Asia, all these countries, they belong to collectivistic culture, where we kind of like to live with our family, with our extended family. We identify ourselves in terms of our school, our family, the immediate environment, our neighborhood. If we achieve something, then we kind of say, okay, I achieved it because of my family. We don't take individual credit. And the same thing happens when we are bringing up children. What we do is we kind of, at the moment the child is born, the child spends time with the mom for at least 3 years of life. The mom sleeps with the child for 3 years, 3, 4, 5, or maybe up to 10, 12 years with the child. And that is quite common in collectivistic culture. Now, in individualistic culture, what is individualistic culture? Individualistic culture is a culture where the focus is on individualism. How, if I do something good, then I should get the credit, not others. It is because of my own hard work I have achieved this. So this is the individualistic culture. Now, if I bring up a child in an individualistic culture, they want to make the child independent the moment the child, immediately after the child is born. So the training for independence starts from very, very early childhood. When the baby is born, maybe for first few days, if required, the child will have a skin contact with mom and sleep with mom. But after that, the child will sleep in a crib, like a small bed, which is next to mother's bed. The mother will be there, will cater to the needs of the child. But at the same time, the child learns to sleep alone. The child does not need mother to pat and walk around, carry the child on the back, and send the child off to sleep. So what happens is the training starts from there. So there is nothing wrong in either of these two cultures. It's just two different approaches to parenting. And if the person who asked me the question, to what age the child should sleep, I would say that it depends on parents. If the parents want, there is nothing wrong if the child sleeps with the parent for until, say, of course, if the child is like growing really, maybe until 6-7 years, if child insists, or they're, and your family is fine, you are fine with it, then that's fine. But if you think that, kind of the child needs to be independent, the child needs to sleep alone, and, that otherwise, oftentimes the child, they feel scared to sleep alone. So that is one of the reasons they don't sleep alone. They sleep with their parents. So one of the ways to remove that fear is to let them sleep, alone, and that can help, get rid of the fear. And again, it depends on the parents. But yeah, maybe up to 6-7 years they can do that if they want, or if they think they want to make their child independent, they can start right from the beginning, like immediately, say after a month or so, they can start having the child sleep in a crib next to the mother, but in a small different bed. So there is no right or wrong in that, I would say. Again, you are on mute, Mr. Majumdar.
One last question we'll take. After that, we will sign off. Dr. Pinky Barua, she wants to know how to deal with ADHD.
I can tell you, yes. One thing I will tell you, ADHD is a medical condition. It is attention deficit hyperactive disorder. It is a medical condition. It is diagnosed following DSM, Diagnostic Statistic Manual, which is developed by medical practitioners, and so they follow that based on signs and symptoms, they provide appropriate medication for the children. So this is something which does not belong to my area, because for these kind of medical problem, one needs to specifically go to a specialist who deals with, like medical specialist who deals with this kind of, ADHD problem. But again, it depends. Like there is degree, if it is in a very mild. It could be very mild, it could be moderate, it could be very strong. But again, the child has to go through the diagnosis to actually understand what specific symptom the child is showing. And based on that, those symptoms, they always are not, they're not for all children. So based on their symptoms, there are specific treatments which are designed by the therapist for that.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. It's too late. I know it's almost 2 o'clock, I think so, in your place. So from the entire team of Regional Science Center Guwahati, we are thankful to you that you have given the time, and it's a very enlightening and I think it will be very useful session for our parents, and we are extremely thankful to you. And I hope in near future we will again meet, and that will be more interactive session. I hope so. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Majumdar, for organizing this event. And I thank everyone in Regional Science Center and also all the attendees of this particular event for being a part of this talk. And I hope this presentation has helped you in some way or the other. And with this, I like to wish you a very good day. And I will sign off after this. Okay. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Namaskar.